Hi, everyone. Welcome to Figuring Out Fabric, where I ask dumb questions and you get smart answers. And here I've got Ewa Hutmacher, who is a change designer or cultural designer, change consultant, podcast host, and has been doing this sort of stuff for the past 2 decades. So I'm really excited to have you on the show, especially get kind of an outside perspective. Um, so I guess cultural designer, change consultant, right?
Yeah.
So as a consultant myself, um, even just regular consulting, it it's a little microcosm of that in my experience. Because this is a very American way of putting it, so I hope no one takes any offense. But my la- my last job, my boss once told me, consulting is the art of telling someone they're an idiot and having them say thank you. Now that's hyperbole, but there's some real truth there of you're you're trying to do the impossible. There's a paradox because so often people want to pay you to then ignore you. They want to basically, all right, we need to get a second opinion so then we can just do what we were going to do, or you you are trying to balance this social capital, social credit. You're trying to leverage this expertise to get people to do stuff that may not be in their nature or what they want to do. And you have to find ways to accomplish that smoothly and subtly. And for me, like I I like to think I'm good at it, but it's not by design. I had no people skills in my 20s. I was oblivious, I was blunt, I was probably obnoxious, I'm sure. And now, like I get paid a lot of money to have people skills. And
Mm.
so when I engage with a client, I'm very quickly trying to build rapport and have a relationship and all this kind of stuff. I'm trying to find ways to phrase things to be like, okay, here's some, be option oriented. Okay, you could do this or this, and these are the trade-offs, and trying to help guide them without pushing them. Because ultimately, it's kind of a fake authority. I have no power or control over them.
Mm.
All I get to do is just slide over the table like my advice, and then they are free to ignore it. So that's been my experience with regular consulting.
Mm.
What does it mean when you've decided to make your entire job helping people do stuff that they have no interest in doing? Because otherwise they wouldn't need you if they were following that path, because you're helping them change.
Yes,
So what is
a
it like?
lot. And change, that is really difficult because no one like to change. You don't like to change. It is really difficult to change and collect a lot of people. They have different backgrounds, beliefs, skills,
Yeah.
um, behaviors. To align them and to understand why it is important. Yeah, that is a quite massive thing. So, in some sort of way, it is important to help them understand where are we going, what's the purpose of this, why are we doing this, and yeah, give them the tools and resources to make that change journey. And it is like a journey. It's not made in one day,
Right.
in a half day course or yeah, nice lunch or something like that. It could be projects for the organization that is several years to make a big change initiative, but help them understand the real problem that is important and align them.
Yeah. So I guess one question about that is, so for your clients, what I'm trying to think of the right way to put this, but what's the forcing factor generally that causes them to say, okay, we need help? Is it they see, okay, if we aren't able to like turn this ship, we're going to hit an iceberg, right? We know that there's some sort of existential threat, or is it something where like they have tried, they know they want to do it, and the fact that people are messy and businesses have inertia has gotten in the way, right? Is the response acute? Is it they tried and failed, or something else? What causes someone to say, "Okay, we need an expert to come in and help us make this change because the the turning radius." I've heard it said that a turning radius on like a naval aircraft carrier is like 5 miles, right? These big ships move very slowly.
Mm.
So what causes them to bring in the tugboat that is you to help just kind of ferry that along a little faster?
It could be different, lots of reasons. Sometimes they have like internal problems and realize they have symptoms. They need to take care of symptoms. Sometimes it is like external factors that remind them all their problems they have. So they see the symptoms more clearly. So it could be lots of triggers. One sort of problem. It could be like a merger. Two companies merge after.
Sure.
Yeah, and do they do the pre-work before the merger? Quite often, I think 80% of mergers have really serious damage in the culture afterwards. So they lose a lot of value in a merger and acquisition. So that could be one reason they need help to take care of the afterwork of a merger and keep as much value as possible from that sort of transaction. Sometimes it's also a thing that leaders in the organization, they need help from an external facilitator to do like courageous conversations. They need support from someone that have other perspectives, can ask other questions. Sometimes it is like politics internally, and then they need an external facilitator that take care and help and facilitate a courageous conversation. So that is also one thing.
That's interesting because there's one of my favorite books on people skills is called Crucial Conversations.
Mm-hmm. I have it in the background. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's big in there is the idea that for these high stakes conversations to work, you need to have mutual respect and mutual trust.
Yes, true.
And so it sounds like sometimes as a facilitator, because there's, I don't even want to say animosity, but just a lot of built up assumptions that of like, okay, how does the CEO view me? How do they view my work? And the fact that you have this difficult power dynamic, because it is extremely hard to give honest feedback to someone that can fire you.
Absolutely.
Right? And
You
so
need to be very, very, the psychological safety to do that. Absolutely.
So it sounds like sometimes what you're doing is, because you have no stake in the game, you're able to bring in some of that respect and psychological safety and trust, right? Like you're basically just, you're almost, back channel isn't the right word because back channels happen behind the scenes, right? You're almost like a front channel for some of these conversations and things to happen, it sounds like. Do you know
But
what I'm saying?
it's also like a three-step rocket to have courageous conversation in organization with politics, where if people are scared of their CEO, if the climate are that they are scared, then I need to prepare several. I need to have support from the leadership team, because if I don't have support from them, I can't just show up like a jump out of the box and so here I am. I will sell the
Right.
company. It doesn't work. So I need to like earn the trust and facilitate several training sessions to help them and understand from an early stage where are they in their psychological safety, so I can custom made like a program for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. The counter example that comes to my mind is trashy American TV, because you have shows like Dr. Phil or Judge Judy where you
Mhm.
have this person who's this arbiter,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes people get surprised or they didn't know and all this stuff. And usually it's very low stakes, everyday stuff like, okay, who's the father of a baby, or, some little thing that people want to deal with. But you're right that like it sounds a lot like a lot of IT projects where you need a sponsor, essentially, as an
Absolutely.
organization, some sort of champion or something like that.
Hmm. Really, really important. Without a sponsor, yeah, then we had like a fail. And that is also very important. There are no quick fixes, no free lunches. It is like hard work. A sponsor, they need to believe in me. I need to understand the organization. They need to understand their own problems, and that journey, yeah, it is not one day. It is a process. So
Yeah.
culture, that is a culture journey.
No, that all makes sense. So, pivoting a little bit. So this podcast is about Microsoft Fabric, and
Yes.
we chatted a little bit. And
Yeah.
um, Fabric, you've no experience in that. Although I did see one of the when you fill out the form, you had a thing about I think it was data driven culture.
Hmm.
What is that?
Yeah.
What does that look like in your experience? So what does that mean to you exactly? Because that might tie in
Um,
with others.
yeah, my experience of learning of a data-driven culture, both I have a perspective from learning. I have worked with efficient learning, digital learning for many years, and that is a culture to find out the right, correct metrics for all learning and development managers, etc., and all the employees in the organizations. But also, you can connect a data-driven culture to workplace culture, because you have a purpose, you have values, you have priorities, and how can you, as an organization and leadership team, reach your goals? So you need to define your outcome and understand what sort of behaviors are the drivers to reach the outcome for. Is it, yeah, if it is it revenues, or
Yeah.
is it lower sick leave? What is it that is important for the organization? But you can set like data-driven metrics also in a workplace culture environment.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're saying that there's ways to measure cultural change.
Absolutely, that is really important. I think it's a success factor. If you do a large, 3-year initiative in workplace culture, you would like to see other behaviors in leadership and employers. If you connect some sort of metrics, then you can see progress in that culture change initiative.
It's interesting the idea that you can actually measure it because it feels so amorphous, right? Like when I took sociology class in high school, we learned about norms and mores and folkways and all this kind of stuff. And, it's hard to I have even imagine what you might have like a little tally counter
Mhm.
of like, all right, every time someone asks a question about does this align with our values, we're gonna click the tally counter and like,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I can believe it, but it's hard for me to imagine what kind of things you might try and measure, because I don't know, the idea of culture and behavior feels almost antithetical to raw numbers. Yeah.
If you have like an example, you need to have some sort. You need alignment from the leadership team, so the leaders and employees understand. Then you can have like a priority, like speed over outcomes. The outcomes, yeah, they are important, but
Sure.
it's even more important to have speed or fail fast, yeah, the speed in the process. And then if you have that priority from the leadership team down in the organization, down to the teams, to the employees, then you can create behaviors for them in their work related processes so they understand that okay, speed, that is important, make it quick, it doesn't matter if we fail. We can learn from the failures, so then you can connect the measurements and see how we progress.
Yeah, and I will say, tying it back to Microsoft Fabric, I think there's cultural trends in tech that can be applied or aimed for. So, um, there's a term in the industry. Have you ever heard of DevOps before?
Yes.
Yeah. So the idea that well, I just never know, right? Like,
Too many friends in the data culture
yeah,
community.
right. I know. You run a data conference in Stockholm, so
Yes.
I assume you attend some of the sessions, right? But
Yes.
I can see for people having trouble making this feel grounded, I think things like trying to implement not only DevOps, but having a quality process. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a multi-level. Like, let's say that was your goal. Like, you're like, okay, we want to improve quality. We want to improve reliability.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with Fabric, you're really going to have some challenges and you really have to have a plan. So, one of the things is because Microsoft Fabric was built not basically off of Power BI, but it inherited a lot of the architecture, it's very difficult to do kind of top-down planning because it's built around self-service business intelligence. The whole idea of Power BI originally is if you have a license, you can make a workspace, which is basically a folder. You can make reports inside of that folder and you can share them to whoever you want. And that idea of self-service is very anti-centralization, anti-standards. Everybody's doing their own sort of thing. And Fabric makes that worse. So if you don't have some sort of plan and cultural backing, it's going to be 10 times worse because I don't know if this is a thing that you have in Sweden, but I grew up with parents from the Great Depression, and we used to have something called a junk drawer, which was
Junk drawer.
literally
Mm-hmm.
junk drawer, like you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. And it was a drawer with just all the random odds and ends. And I have a picture I use in my presentation. So there'd be rubber bands and marbles.
Okay.
There's like a baseball card, clothespins, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And because my grandparents were from the Great Depression, they never wanted to throw anything away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling you before we started recording about how one of the defining features of big data today is it's cheaper to just keep everything and figure out later what you need than to go through that sorting process initially. Because when it's $11 for a terabyte of data, why not?
Yeah.
But the problem is, I use way too many analogies, so if they start to get confusing, just let me know because I'm jumping all.
Well, it's okay.
Or,
I already think about like an iceberg or something like that when you describe this. It's have lots of shit below the surface.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But like when it came to Power BI, you were just dealing with like the final portion, so like the faucet, And now we're asking people to deal with the plumbing. And the thing is, if you don't build the plumbing right, that has
Mm.
ramifications for a long, long time. And so you have this, hopefully no one from Microsoft is listening, but the design of Fabric today encourages bad data culture,
Yeah.
because the thing is, it has such flexibility that there's not the guidance of, okay, this is the way to do it that's going to lead to those best practices, whether you're trying to do DevOps, whether you're trying to have good data quality, because
Mm.
there is the idea with this of, sometimes it's called the medallion architecture, it goes by different names, but the medallion architecture, the idea is you have different stages of your data as it's being refined and cleaned.
Mm.
And so bronze, your bronze layer is just throw it all in there. And then silver is you've
Mm.
done some cleanup. You've said,
Yeah.
okay, these are the pieces we care about. We fixed errors. So if someone put in a date that's physically impossible, we fixed that. We've maybe reshaped the data so it's something more like what you would expect in an Excel table or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have gold, where you're adding in the business meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just here's the raw sales numbers,
Mm.
but now we can calculate margin or
Mm.
profit
Mm.
or gross sales.
Yeah.
And so there's patterns
Mm.
that encourage good data culture, good data quality. But the problem is, when you ask people, okay, well, how do I implement it?
Mm-hmm.
That's up to you. There's different ways to do it, but we're all discovering the right way to do it. And so it's very frustrating, because it's as if, again, more analogies,
Mm.
you're trying to build a house,
Mm.
and there's some guidance on, okay, here's how you do the electrical sockets, here's how some of the framing should be.
Yeah.
But then when you go to do it, you're just given a big pallet of lumber and some
Yeah.
nails
Yeah.
and left to your own devices. And so what I'm trying to say is, Fabric has a challenge where the flexibility and the history of self-service
Mm-hmm.
means there's nothing in place to guide people to a good data culture by default. Does that all make sense? Do you have any
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I can see some comparisons to how large companies work with workplace culture as well,
Yeah.
because it's important to understand, yeah, the goals, the outcomes. What should we measure? What sort of pieces, you said, build a house?
Yeah.
What sort of pieces do we need to build a house? Just take metrics from the air, that doesn't help to to
Right. Yeah.
to change the companies if they have a large culture initiative, a culture change project. Then they need to dig deeper, go to the root cause, not measure the wrong things, not measure the wrong metrics, and try to correct the wrong metrics. They need to take the right actions. Some of my work is to be like a doctor, to see what sort of problem do the patient has. Not give pills or medicines. Give the right solve the right problem. So they need to understand the root cause and measure with the right metrics. And
Yes. Good.
metrics is only one thing. In an organization with people, then it is the behaviors, the actions, what happens. Without actions, we will not develop organization without actions.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, so repeating what you said, it sounds like there's three main pieces. First is identifying whatever the pain is that's causing the organization to want to engage in cultural change.
Yeah.
And then having something you can measure that actually aligns with that,
Yes.
because it's very easy to just come up with something that doesn't help. So there's a parable or a joke that's apocryphal about Russian nail factories and perverse incentives where the idea is that, okay, because Russia was this centrally planned economy, they could define all the measures for their factories. And so they try saying, okay, we want to increase the number of nails that are produced. So then the factory makes just smaller nails. And they say, no, 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 that's not what we meant. We care about volume, like mass. And it's like, okay, so they make just one giant nail. And obviously that didn't quite happen, but you have, if you go to the Wikipedia page for perverse incentives, you have real world instances where this stuff happened. I think one of the most tragic and mildly comical instances was, I believe, when England still ruled over India. They were trying to cut down on the number of, it was like cobras or vipers, but a specific type of snake. And so they would pay for the decapitated heads of those snakes. And you think, okay, great, people are going to hunt these snakes, get rid of them, perfect. Well, it was a poor nation at the time. And so you have people who started farming those snakes. And so basically they were increasing the population of those snakes. And when they took away the incentives, the people just released the snakes in the wild until it completely backfired.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that you said is like, there needs to be action. At some point, it's not enough to measure.
No.
We're not like scientists up on a balcony just observing. But there needs to be something that actually is happening to try and bring that into alignment. So that'll make sense. Good.
Yes, and a lot of the things that happens, it's also like symptoms and things that is below the surface in the organizations. It's quite often that people, they don't even speak about quite serious problems. So it's important to try to. That's also one of my roles as a facilitator, to help organization dig deeper and see what's below the surface, so it comes to the knowledge.
So I guess one final kind of topic to talk about. So as much as I'd like to pretend otherwise, I doubt there's a lot of C-suite executives listening to my podcast. I think a lot more are kind of headline developers, programmers, IT folks. And so my kind of question is, what responsibility lies with them for cultural change, and what should they do when they're just trying to keep up with the physical change around them, the technological change around them? Because everything you've talked about makes sense as someone who's ideally invited into an organization and there's a corporate sponsor.
Yeah.
So for a lot of these people, like myself in some ways, they've been just dropped into this in the sense that, so licenses for Power BI by itself has gotten about 40% more expensive as of April. So it used to be $10 per month for like a decade. Price for that went up. There used to be a bulk license called Power BI Premium where you pay for compute capacity.
Yeah.
And that was at like the $5,000 per month level, but you could have unlimited users as long as you had the capacity. That's going away and being replaced with the Fabric equivalent. And so what this means is people who are happy with Power BI are now being gently nudged into Fabric, which, as we talked about kind of off screen, is not just one set of tooling they're used to, but now there's 5 times as many things you can create in this. So for people where, as the saying goes, like, who moved my cheese from the book,
I read it recently.
Right.
Yeah.
The cheese has been moved. So my question for you is, for those people, what is their obligation to try and drive culture change versus just hang on tight and survive? And like, what can they do? Like, I could imagine lunch and learns as an example or something like that. But like, what are your thoughts there?
That is a really good question. Yeah, can you repeat it again?
No, I know. It was more of a story that. So I just repeat the question.
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of what we talked about assumes that you have a corporate champion or sponsor who is
Yeah.
driving change. The situation with fabric is change is happening whether people like it or not. So if you are not entry level, but base level worker, you're not a manager, you're not a director, what should you try to do to drive cultural change from the bottom up? And what can you do? Because it may be that there's not a lot you can do. So how can you drive change from the bottom up? And should that even be your responsibility?
I think it is a responsibility for everybody. All
Yeah.
people in an organization has some sort of responsibility. I see it that the leadership team, they are responsible for the culture, but
Yeah.
it's absolutely possible to do a lot of smaller initiatives in the teams all around the organization. And it could be, as you mentioned, lunch and learns. It could be feedback sessions. You can
Mm.
look at some sort of learning module, speak about it. You can test, try, feedback each other, create activities that way. So every single people in an organization can do something. Small things becomes much larger when many people do it
Yeah.
from the grassroots level.
No,
Well, the best
I think
is
that makes
from the
sense.
top
Good.
and from the grassroots level, and yeah, bottom
Yeah,
up.
that makes sense. I'll give my kind of opinion and some ideas, and then we'll kind of pivot into, wrap up questions.
Yeah.
So I think I agree with you. There's definitely a responsibility. I also agree that ultimately the biggest drivers of cultural change is going to be the people in power. But
Mm,
some small ways, some quick wins and small ways that I think from the bottom you can drive that change is, um, as you kind of mentioned, having better feedback kind of channels. So, um, Kurt Bueller has a couple blog posts that we'll put in the show notes where he
mm,
talks about, it's a common thing where people have reports in Excel and we're trying to move them to Power BI. And there's a couple ways that you can go about it, and they're all kind of fraught. You can try to do just a verbatim copy. Like, all right, it's this in Excel and we're going to copy this, and it can, there's some limitations there, but you're not really engaging with the user.
mm,
You can try to get this big, long specification of exactly what they want, and it can take a lot of time. And the third approach that he recommends involves workshops and working together and all that kind of
mm.
stuff. So
Yeah.
I think one area where an individual can drive cultural change is in that feedback channel that you mentioned. Another one I think that we kind of already talked about is in both DevOps, so overall quality, but
Mm,
then data quality as well. And so, yes, you can't get the entire organization to follow in your footsteps,
mm,
but you can make sure that for the areas you work in, you have a process for, okay, here's how we review stuff. We're putting stuff in source control, all these sorts of things. And then third, like you said, finding ways to share those learnings, whether it's a lunch and learn or some other kind of approach. So we'll get some references in there, but I think
mm.
those are all options, but it's hard. Good.
Yes, and sometimes I meet organizations, it is like heavy and slow driven from the top, but then it is a few teams, one team or a few teams that start testing, like AI solutions or products. They have like a workshop, they have lunch and learns, and when they have some conclusions from the project, then they go to the next team and to the next team and to the next team, and they start to try. So it's possible to do that, to take the small steps, but some leader or team needs to start.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yes,
All right, so let's wrap up with a couple quick questions.
absolutely.
So the usual questions don't work because you have no idea what your favorite fabric feature is yet. Maybe in a year you'll learn. Maybe Daniel,
Sorry, Jean.
your husband, will start using fabric and he can tell you his favorite
Yeah, yeah,
feature.
absolutely.
Uh,
We have this weekend so for fabric.
uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so what has been your favorite part of kind of working to drive cultural change in companies?
Ooh, difficult. I love,
That's fair.
yeah, I love to develop people, to help them find their meaning in work life, in life.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, man, help organization be much more impactful because I see so many large opportunities. When I see their values, I can see I can scratch and be like the doctor and diagnose set a diagnosis on some sort of problems. Then I see the opportunities, how much they can do uh, if they take the right steps. And
Right.
it's awesome to see that.
So seeing the potential and then getting them there and be like, you
Yeah.
did it, like getting to cheer them at the finish line.
Absolutely.
So working with people is hard. What's been the most frustrating thing about trying to change culture?
What's the most frustrating? Mm, it's a lot of quick wins. It is like a focus. We want change and we want the results tomorrow or even today. But when it is larger problems in an organization, it takes time. So it is a frustration for me if they come to me and say, we have this sort of problems, then the question to me is, is this everything? Is this true or not? What is the real problem? Sometimes is the quick fix with, can you do a 2-hour workshop? But a 2-hour workshop doesn't solve the problem because often it's much, much larger when they come to me. And then try often to serve a solution for me and say, okay, we need this. And maybe I have another perspective on what we need to do. And then I need to, the paradox, what they need.
Yeah, there's a joke. I don't know how well it translates, but this not so smart person goes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, everything hurts really bad." And the doctor says, "Really? Where does it hurt?" And you say, "Well, when I touch my head, it hurts. When I touch my chin, it hurts. When I touch my shoulder, it hurts. When I touch my arm, it hurts." And the doctor like looks for a moment and thinks and says, "Well, it looks like you have a broken finger, right?" And so just a severe misunderstanding of the causality there, right? And what the core problem is. And so I was thinking that when you're talking about like there's a deeper issue. They try to bring you in and be like, "Hey, I've got this headache. Every time I touch my head, it hurts." And it's like, that's not your problem.
Mm.
The symptom.
Yes, cool.
So there are way too many social media networks. Where can people find you? And you're a consultant. So what do you want to promote or pitch or what have you?
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is LinkedIn,
Okay.
Ewa Hutmacher, EWA Hutmacher, Hutmacher, Swiss hat maker. So LinkedIn or snabfoting.com, my homepage. And yeah, for the moment, I do a really interesting study in workplace culture. So the last 3 months, I have made interviews with HR directors all over
Yeah.
all over Sweden, and I also have colleagues all around the world that collect data in interviews from Fearless Culture. So we will do a study with local reports and a global report. So It's very interesting to see the findings now because I created a report, and it will be available quite soon.
Cool. Very
Yes.
cool. Well, it has been a pleasure to talk with you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. Thanks for having me.